Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And we tackle questions about work and we try to do the ones that are difficult. And this one is definitely a difficult one with lots of folks going through this now. And I'm here with my teammate, Lori, who's going to frame today's question.
Yep. So, hi, everybody. I'm Lori. I'm an investor on the Bloomberg Beta team, and I'm 3 months into the gig and already live streaming with Roy many times. So, today's topic is extremely relevant to what's been going on lately with Twitter, Stripe, Lyft, lots of different companies, which is layoffs. And what we wanted to talk about was if somebody were to say, hey, I just got laid off, what do I do next?
Yeah. So first to say, of course, this is a thing that is happening a lot right now. And also, it's something that is hard. Oops, just unplugging something. Stop making noise. It's something that is hard both at the times when it feels lonely, when it's like, oh, only my company is going through this. And at the times like now, when a lot of companies are doing this. And so first, let's just acknowledge like it's a traumatic event or can be. For some people, they're like, oh, I've been laid off a bunch of times, no big deal, on to the next thing. I'll figure it out. I got lots of savings. But for the vast majority of people, it's a wound to their like life story about what they were going to do professionally. Like nobody starts out in the working world saying, I hope I get laid off. And so the first thing I think to do is just to tend to yourself emotionally, is like make sure that you know how to support yourself, and whatever other resources you can access, definitely do access, because there's a grieving process. And some people, like, that is an enormous part of what this experience is for them. And for some, it's like, hey, I need to jump right back on the horse. And for some, it is, let me like take some time to take stock of like, am I living in the right place? Am I in the right industry? And all of those are acceptable answers. So I think the first piece is emotional, of self-care. And now even that is on some level of privilege, because, for some folks, it's like, shit, I need a job like right fucking now. And so, only you know what your personal financial circumstances are, but obviously you've got to design next steps that meet your own goals. If you have the ability to take some time, then for sure, time and space can be enormously helpful. The other thing that's almost always helpful, and then I'll get into the more practical side, this sort of bridges from the emotional to the practical, is having a community. Oftentimes there are already, depending on the company, there's like an alumni group on Slack, or, there's just some text thread. But finding out other people who have left the company, who have been affected, communicating with them, in order to, just share support with one another and tips, and you can find a ton of places online to look this stuff up. There's a bunch of like HR logistics on the way out. Like you may want some official notification that you have in fact been laid off, because that can be useful. You may want, all the details of how your employment will work. Is your last day immediate? Do you have access to any of the company equipment? Do you need to return anything? Sometimes, in some places, getting laid off can void a non-compete agreement. So you just kind of want to know all that stuff. Health insurance, just get to the bottom of like answering all that stuff. If you're available for, you may be eligible for unemployment. And so you may want to get that. And then that gets to the kind of the practical side of the what's next. And I think that depends entirely on how much clarity you have about what you might want to do next. And a safe thing to do is just reach out to the people you're closest to, tell them what's happened, and they may have, suggestions of things to do immediately. And then, following that, I just consider the full range of options. Some people post like, hey, I got laid off today, software engineer looking for work, hire me. And even at a time like this, there are definitely companies that are hiring. Just because it seems to be in the news, the entire economy does not turn on a dime like that. So there are definitely still companies, including companies that we're investors in, that are hiring. And so it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, but you have to pick which techniques serve you, your personality, and your goals. And if you're unsure, take a breath. Like, it's not like if you start 3 days later, anything bad's going to happen, or 3 weeks later. I mean, obviously if you need the money, you need the money. I
I'm
think those are
curious
some of
that,
my high level thoughts on it. But again, it's emotional self-care, build a community, and then figure out the logistics of your separation, and then what you need to do about whatever's next.
right. And I think I'm curious what your thoughts are around the type of self-reflection that people can do in that time, assuming they have a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's easy to just go right back into the career that you were already on, but it's also really hard to think about what you were saying, right? Moving, changing careers. So obviously people are going to lean towards doing what they've always done. So curious how you think about that.
Yeah, it depends on the person. I mean, the first thing I'd say is that the amount of time depends on the person. If you're a senior executive who just got laid off, it may not be like, let me just start looking for in a week or two. If you're like an entry-level salesperson, well, there may be lots of other similar types of jobs in theory that are available. And so it depends a lot on the kind of role and on you as an individual. I mean, some people need months, and some people want to go travel the world. They saved up some money and they want to just go like backpack. And so only you know what you need. That said, the kind of self-reflection I think that's almost always to me the most useful. The first thing is just, what did I learn?
Mm-hmm.
And that can take a lot of forms. One form is the letter to the next person who would take your job, or to the company. Even if you never send it, that letter can be cathartic. Another form is the, what do I want to get out of the next thing? And I've got a blog post about how to think about getting career advice, but usually people think in terms of what job they want, what role, maybe what location or what kind of company. Oftentimes they fall into what I call the ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend syndrome of like whatever they most disliked about the previous thing. It's like, as long as they don't have red hair, it's like, I didn't like that we sold ads. That was my version of it. I didn't like having to sell ads. I never want to touch ad sales ever again in my life.
Yeah.
You eventually get over it. But just being aware of those human biases is important. But
well,
then,
oh no, sorry. I was just going to jump in. That's a hilarious metaphor that my friends and I actually often say, like from past jobs, that people will have a rebound job. When they hated something about a specific job, they'll go all the way to the opposite, stay there a very short amount of time, and then go on to whatever is a more long-term.
And by the way, maybe that's an okay answer. Like, it's not to say that that's bad. And I guess I should say ex-partner, because, maybe somebody is neither a boyfriend nor a girlfriend. And but the thinking about the next thing in terms of, what do I want to get out of it? Not what do I want, but what do I want to get out of it? Well, I need something that pays me the following, and where I can have an opportunity to learn the following thing, because then the job or the choice to do something completely different. I mean, maybe you want to go be a novelist. Maybe you want to wait tables, exactly, like whatever it is. Maybe you want to start, by the way, we are investors, like maybe it's time to start your own company. And so thinking to yourself about that, what I want to get out of it, can often lead to the answers about, well, I want to spend more time with my kids. And so maybe I need to live in a place where it's more conducive to that kind of thing. And the last thing I'd say about designing next steps is, oftentimes when you're in a job, particularly the kind of job where layoffs are about to happen, which can become emotionally all consuming, you end up exclusively focused on that job. And professional life can be a portfolio of activities. And so maybe you want to start your side hustle, while you're between stuff. Maybe that's like a good way for you to take your mind off of things. And so not just thinking in terms of like the LinkedIn view of your jobs, like a linear succession of employment of roles, but thinking as a portfolio can also be mind expanding.
And I think that really ties into the idea of not comparing yourself to other people, because I think what tends to happen is that people get laid off in a batch, and then you're looking at, oh, so-and-so got a job really quickly. And that's not healthy, right?
Totally.
Everyone's on their own path.
It's really well put. I mean, I think that the psychological tendencies that dominate can really differ from person to person. For some, they just think, oh, I'm not good enough, or or they'll do game filming of like, man, if only I hadn't picked this project 3 months ago. I mean, if you're at Twitter now, if only I'd checked in a bunch of meaningless lines of code, maybe I'd have been top of the list or not. And so you got to think to yourself, is that really true? Am I just doing it? If you have access to mental health support resources, I definitely recommend using them. Coach, therapist, etc. Friends are great.
Yeah. Well, and for layoffs, I think it's also important to remember the Twitter example is kind of egregious, right? Of lines of code. But if, for most of the time, it's not that they're going person by person and looking at their performance, right? It's like at a lot more macro scale. It has to do with your salary relative to other people in your cohort. There's so much that goes into it that you could never have controlled.
And it has to do with things like, well, the divisional VP who I'm under had pissed off the CEO. So he got or she got they got a slightly higher target for layoffs than everybody else did. I mean, and oftentimes it really is just gross as opposed to fine, not gross as not gross as in disgusting. It's just gross decision making. People are like, well, we need to cut half. And, I don't know, we went, almost randomly at some point. And so always just important to keep all that in mind. Anything else, Lori, that you think would be on your mind if you were in this situation?
It's funny. I think that all the options can be really paralyzing. And so for me, knowing that that's something that I would probably feel, I would focus on just doing something, right? Even if that's like a consistent, every day going for a run at X time to build some schedule back in. Sorry, my dog's barking. That type of thing, I think, can really start to get you moving. It doesn't have to be all in one day. Okay, now I'm going to apply for jobs, start a side hustle, start a company. You can just do one thing at a time and go slowly.
And maybe the answer is you do the one thing that is the most restorative to you because you've just taken a real hit.
Yeah.
And for folks who've been affected, just want to say that we are trying to do this from the perspective of empathy. And if something is rubbed the wrong way, or if we've missed something you think is important, you feel free to comment, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever we are. If folks want to see, we're going to put this up. We've also had some past ones on how to do layoffs in a constructive and empathetic way. This is now the flip side of that. And maybe we'll talk about some other issues around this. I mean, for the people who stay behind, it's not easy.
Oh my gosh. And that's a huge topic, right? Because it's emotionally hard and your work life gets completely thrown off.
Yeah. I mean, you're all of a sudden inheriting all this work, and let's not, just that's on some level a high class problem, but no less a problem. So you can see this in the past ones we've done on layoffs on thisisnotadvice.work. If you prefer audio, once a week we put up a short audio clip that's a distillation of one of these. You can just go to jam.ai and see that there. And Lori, thank you for being willing to tackle a tough subject. This one more than generally, it's not advice because we're not telling anybody you should do X. We're sharing, here are some of our experiences. Here's what we've seen work, for others who have been through this. And that's how we all get through this is together.
Giving voice to the fact that this is emotional and this is more than just a job.
Yeah. To be continued. Thank you, Lori.